This is a pill that's been used for a long time, for 30, 40 years on the malaria.
Fluoroquinolone antibiotics were associated with idiopathic intracranial hypertension, II. Oral fluoroquinolone antibiotics are commonly used. They are known to worsen myasthenia gravis and increase the risk for tendon rupture, peripheral neuropathy, and seizure.
I happen to be taking it.
Doxycycline, used to treat malaria, acne, and other infections, could cause increased intracranial pressure, is not a recent revelation. One other tetracyclic antibiotics such as minocycline and tetracycline have caused intracranial hypertension. Benign intracranial hypertension is a syndrome of signs and symptoms of increased intracranial pressure without causative lesions on images obtained by magnetic resonance imaging or computed tomography. 2. The disorder is controversial from its name to its putative pathophysiology, but it should be considered when anyone taking doxycycline begins to complain of a new headache. The first controversy surrounding the disorder is the name, benign intracranial hypertension. For over 100 years the condition has been known as pseudotumor cerebri or benign intracranial hypertension. 3. Corbett and Thompson, following the lead of Buchheit, made a plea to replace benign with idiopathic. 4. To set apart the idiopathic form of increased intracranial pressure from symptomatic forms, and to dispel the notion that the condition is totally benign. What to call this syndrome is far from settled, but at present we diagnose the primary or idiopathic form in individuals in whom no cause can be found after careful questioning and clinical evaluation. The secondary forms of intracranial pressure should be characterized as intracranial hypertension due to venous thrombosis, or intracranial hypertension due to medication, such as doxycycline.
Things have come out about the hydroxy. A lot of good things have come out. And you'd be surprised at how many people are taking it, especially the frontline workers. The frontline workers, many are taking it. I happen to be taking it. Hydroxychloroquine.
When?
Right now, yeah.
Yeah, when?
A couple of weeks ago, I started taking it. Because I think it's good. I've heard a lot of good stories. And if it's not good, I'll tell you right. I'm taking it. Hydroxychloroquine. The frontline workers, many are taking it. I happen to be taking it. The frontline workers, many are taking it. I happen to be taking it.
Despite the many controversies, intracranial hypertension due to use of doxycycline does occur. Practitioners prescribing the tetracyclic antibiotics should be aware of the syndrome of increased intracranial pressure, and pay particular attention to the ocular fundus for papilledema. Appropriate referral for visual testing including visual fields should be made, and treatment directed at stopping the drug, and instituting symptomatic treatment that lowers the intracranial pressure.
I happen to be taking it.
Hydroxychloroquine.
I'm taking it. Hydroxychloroquine.
A drug causes brain damage that mimics PTSD. Case study Patricia Kime, August 11, 2016. Corporal Timothy Dobson, a fire team leader with 2nd Platoon, Ground Combat Element, Security Cooperation Task Force Africa Partnership Station 2011, takes doxycycline once per day in accordance with a weekly dosage of Mefloquine to prevent the spread of malaria. The daily routine is supervised by 1st Sergeant Jason Moffett and one of the 2nd Platoon corpsmen to ensure that meds are taken each day while APS 11 conducts its mission of security cooperation through military-to-military exchanges. U.S. Marine Corps. Photo by Lance Corporal Timothy L. Solano. The case of a service member diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder but found instead to have brain damage caused by a malaria drug raises questions about the origin of similar symptoms in other post-9/11 veterans. According to the case study published online in Drug Safety Case Reports in June, a U.S. military member sought treatment at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland, for uncontrolled anger, insomnia, nightmares and memory loss. The once active sailor, who ran marathons and deployed in 2009 to East Africa, reported stumbling frequently, arguing with his family and needing significant support from his staff while on the job due to cognitive issues. Physicians diagnosed the service member with anxiety, PTSD and a thiamine deficiency, but after months of treatment, including medication, behavioral therapy and daily doses of vitamins, little changed. The patient continued to be hobbled by his symptoms, eventually leaving the military on a medical discharge and questioning his abilities to function or take care of his children. It wasn't until physicians took a hard look at his medical history, which included vertigo that began 2 months after his Africa deployment, that they suspected mefloquine poisoning. The medication, once used widely by the U.S. Armed Forces to prevent and treat malaria, has been linked to brainstem lesions and psychiatric symptoms. While no test is available to prove the sailor suffered what is called mefloquine toxicity, he scored high enough on an adverse drug reaction probability survey to tie his symptoms to the drug, also known as larium. The sailor told his Walter Reed doctors that he began experiencing vivid dreams and disequilibrium within 2 months of starting the required deployment protocol.
I'm taking it, hydroxychloroquine.
That symptoms can last years after a person stops taking the drug. And since the symptoms are so similar to PTSD, the researchers add, they serve to confound the diagnosis of either condition. It demonstrates the difficulty in distinguishing from possible mefloquine-induced toxicity versus PTSD and raises some questions regarding possible linkages between the two diagnoses.
I happen to be taking it. Tested in terms
when Jimmy
of,
Corrigan left on deployment in the Navy 3 years ago, he was in the best physical shape of his life.
It for about a week and
Today,
a half now,
he can't walk without a cane. He gets
here.
angry for no reason and has been hospitalized twice to prevent suicide.
Keep your stand up straight.
2 military doctors say Corrigan suffered a brain injury after taking the anti-malaria drug Mefloquine. Corrigan, who was never in combat, says his very first dose caused hallucinations and depression.
Something wasn't right, like a doomed kind of sensation, like something's different.
Corrigan's wife, Nikki, says Mefloquine destroyed Jimmy's balance and changed his personality.
The best way I can describe someone on Mefloquine is literally as if someone had taken my husband's brain and put somebody else's in there.
I happen to be taking it. Hydroxychloroquine?
I'm
taking it, hydroxychloroquine. Right now,
My name is Mark Armstrong. I took Mefloquine whilst I was in the Australian Army. I was diagnosed with PTSD in 1997 as a result of my service in Rwanda. Since then, I've had at least 4 or 5, maybe more psychologists say that there was something else going on in my head.
That I was having temporal lobe seizures caused by mefloquine toxicity. Everything made sense all of a sudden.
It's a controversial anti-malarial drug once commonly prescribed to Canadian soldiers, and many say they've had long-term and debilitating side effects from Mefloquine. Well, now a law firm is crossing the country to prep for a lawsuit against the Canadian government.
My anxiety is so bad I hardly leave the house anymore. In fact, the fact that I'm even here right now took a lot of people and support.
Christian McCurkin calls the anti-malaria pills he had no choice but to take while serving as a peacekeeper in Congo a monster. He was medically released from the military for PTSD, but he now says his symptoms come from brain damage caused by Mefloquine.
Home from Yugoslavia for 2 years and had been under fire and had never had a panic attack before I took this drug. It's been 25 years of hell.
Now, packaging for the drug outlines the risk for side effects, but soldiers are saying in the 90s they had no choice but to take it, and inadequate instruction on when to stop using it. Today, McCurkin was one of many in Edmonton hearing from a Toronto law firm about a mass tort lawsuit against the government. The representative plaintiff served in Somalia.
Hypervigilant and anxious all the time, more ramped up. I felt more aggressive, more ramped up than I should have been. A lot of us were like that.
While there, John Dow witnessed what would be called the Somalia affair, where a Somali teen was beaten to death by 2 Canadian soldiers. Dow blames Mefloquine.
Seeing Master Corporal Clayton Natchy in a florid psychosis, he was hallucinating about camel spiders that weren't there.
The lawyers for the case say they've been in contact with around 600 people who say they're experiencing side effects from the drug.
Who feel so violated by having to take this medication, and now so many of their lives are in ruins.
Now, earlier in the week, I reached out to the Department of National Defense to get an interview. They didn't have anyone available to talk on camera, but they did answer some questions by email. They pointed to a 2017 Surgeons General review that found no long-term effects on human health, while also saying while the drug is used in some cases today, it is no longer the #1 choice. But what these soldiers want is more support from the federal government and an acknowledgement of what this drug did to them.
Their futures have been destroyed. So many of them can't work. and that our veterans deserve way better treatment.
Now, this is the second of the Cross Canada town halls, and the law firm says they hope to have the first of their cases hitting the courts in the coming months. From Edmonton's Kingsway Legion, Carly Robinson, City News.
Are pouring in from around the world in response to our new investigation about a drug you or a loved one may have taken. A small white pill called Mefloquine was intended to prevent malaria, but now many veterans, former Peace Corps volunteers, and other world travelers say it ravaged their lives. Investigative reporter Andrea McCarran and photojournalist John Moger reveal how the weekly dosages never showed up in veterans' medical records.
When you're 21, you follow orders.
Yeah.
Sean was among tens of thousands of American service members who took Mefloquine, a drug to prevent malaria.
When the chain of command tells you to take something,
You just take it. You don't have a choice.
We attempted to give folks the best possible agent to protect them to the highest degree. To do any less would have done them a disservice.
How many service members took the drug? That's difficult to answer because in many cases, veterans say, no records were kept.
I had no pre-screenings, I had no warning.
I was ordered to take a Mefloquine pill every single day.
Even though it's supposed to be a weekly dosage?
I did not know it was supposed to be a weekly dosage.
I didn't get a prescription. I didn't even have it logged in my pharmacy log that I ever got the drug.
There's no proof in your medical records, but you are 100% certain you took that drug?
100%. 100% sure.
Many veterans say record keeping was shoddy at best. So you took Mefloquine on a daily basis for about a month.
Yes.
Yet that doesn't show up anywhere in your records?
No.
Before 2012, few people got it in their medical records. It was just handed out like candy.
Isn't it the protocol, no matter what the medication, that be in a service member's records?
Yes.
I've resubmitted claims multiple times to the VA, and they're saying, oh, well, it's not in your medical record.
If that did in fact occur, that was not within the DoD policy and it should not have occurred.
In 2004, even the VA warned of its possible long-term health effects. Yet the drug was still dispensed for nearly a decade until the FDA warning of 2013.
They just handed me a bottle and said, hey, if you have dreams, just push through them.
After that, the military was only supposed to use it as a drug of last resort.
So from March of 2013 to December of 2013.
Late last year, the Veterans Affairs Administration awarded its first and only 100% permanent and total disability rating to a Marine Corps veteran who served in Somalia. That means he'll get full benefits for his severe service-related injuries, all attributed to Mefloquine.
And we're looking for answers in solid science so that it's not the flavor of the week or a rush of emotion, but that it's rooted in good science.
Later this year, the VA hopes to release a survey of 30,000 veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. It includes questions about Mefloquine.
I just want to let my brothers and sisters know that they're not alone, to not give up. We have to be stronger than the side effects and the damage.
Many service members believe the high suicide rate among our veterans may be linked to the use of this drug. If they're misdiagnosed with PTSD or traumatic brain injury, veterans may not get the treatment, Leslie, that they desperately need.
So this drug is now rarely prescribed. What's next?
Well, we are told by multiple sources that a replacement drug called tefenoquine is being fast-tracked for approval by the FDA. Many believe that's a real problem because the drug was tested on the Australian military, and several veterans there tell us it's proven just as harmful, if not worse than Mefloquine. Right now, we're working on that report and many others, Leslie, related to this drug.
And we will be following it all because of your reporting. Thank you for that. You can watch all of Andrea's reports.
He served his country, fought in war, but after 13 years of treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder, a therapist at the VA calls this Marine a faker. According to a local Iraqi war veteran, a VA psychologist told him he didn't suffer from PTSD, that he's only after drugs.
And that, he feels, discredits his 20 years in the Corps, as well as the physical and emotional sacrifices he made for his country. Senior investigator Steve Andrews is here with his story. And Steve, this really has shaken this vet to the core.
You know, they call this post-traumatic stress disorder for a reason, a good reason. And when veterans go looking for help, they don't need insensitive, unprofessional remarks from the VA. Peter Sirk spent 20 years in the Marine Corps, including some harrowing moments in Iraq in a bloodbath called Mosul.
You heard the mosque music come out, and then all of a sudden just sure hell broke loose.
Peter and dozens of his buddies later became extremely ill from anti-malaria medication, then contracted the disease. He claims he still suffers side effects.
Horrible dreams. I get tremors once in a while. You know, I have neurological problems.
The Navy diagnosed Peter with post-traumatic stress disorder. The VA treated him in New Jersey for 13 years.
My disease is caused me to become very less social, very reclusive, very emotionally torn.
Last week, Peter attended his first therapy session at James A. Haley. Shockingly, the therapist told him he didn't have PTSD. Peter was only there for drugs.
I went in there and, you know, ready to bare my soul to somebody, and they stick their hand down my throat and rip my heart out.
My gut reaction is that's wretched, that's horrible.
According to psychologist Dr. Candace Stewart-Sabin, a remark like that could set off a veteran suffering from PTSD.
You could put a gun to someone's head doing that, in my opinion.
It just drove me so crazy.
Dr. Sabin spent 10 years at the VA building trust with PTSD patients. Comments like Peter heard are destructive.
What that does is invalidate their feelings. It invalidates their experience. It invalidates them as humans.
So where do you go? What do you do?
Well, that's what we're trying to do, find out here. It's frustrating.
Now, I sent Haley's public affairs office a request for an interview and asked how telling a PTSD patient that he's only after drugs fits into their various types of trauma-related treatment that they boast about. Well, it sent back a statement saying, treatment and recovery is a collaboration between clinicians and veterans. Well, we know that. It doesn't look like that happened here. No comment about what, if anything, they're going to say to this therapist, and of course, no interview on camera, and that's a big surprise.
So now what? What's going to happen to him?
Well, you know, Peter told me he knows that he'll never be whole again. He's 44. How sad is that? He hopes he can get back to where he was before all this mess started at Haley, and after calls and emails, he has an appointment in September with a new doctor. So thankfully, he's got somebody new to listen to his issues.
Right now, yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I started taking it because I think it's good. I've heard a lot of good stories. And if it's not good, I'll tell you right, I'm not going to get hurt by it. It's been around for 40 years for malaria, for lupus, for other things. I take it. Frontline workers take it. A lot of doctors take it. Excuse me. A lot of doctors take it. I take it. Now, I hope to not be able to take it soon because, you know, I hope they come up with some answer. But I think people should be allowed to. I got a letter from a doctor the other day from Westchester, New York, around the area. He didn't want anything. He just said, sir, I have hundreds of patients, and I give them hydroxychloroquine. I give them the Z-Pak, which is zithromycin, and I give them zinc. And out of the hundreds of patients, many hundreds, over 300 patients, I haven't lost one. He said, please keep pressing that, sir. And if you look at that phony report that was put in, that report on the hydroxy was given to people that were in extraordinarily bad condition. Extraordinarily bad. People that were dying. No, I think for whatever it's worth, I take it. I would have told you that 3-4 days ago, but we never had a chance because you never asked me the question.
Did the White House doctor recommend that you take that? Is that why you're taking it?
Yeah, White House doctor. I didn't recommend. No, I asked him, what do you think? He said, well, if you'd like it. I said, yeah, I'd like it. I'd like to take it. A lot of people are taking it. A lot of frontline workers are taking hydroxychloroquine. A lot of I don't take it because, hey, people said, oh, maybe he owns the company. No, I don't own the company. You know what? I want the people of this nation to feel good. I don't want them being sick. And there's a very good chance that this has an impact, especially early on. But you look at frontline workers, you look at doctors and nurses, a lot of them are taking it as a preventative. and they're taking, totally unrelated, but they take the Z-Pak or the zithromycin for possible infection. Now, I haven't taken that other than an original dose because all you need, you don't have to take it simultaneously. But the zinc you do take. So I'm taking the two, the zinc and the hydroxy. And all I can tell you is, so far, I seem to be okay.
Can you explain?
And it seems to have an impact, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But if it doesn't, you're not going to get sick or die. This is a pill that's been used for a long time, for 30, 40 years on the malaria. This is a pill that's been used for a long time, for 30, 40 years on the so it's been heavily tested in terms of, I was just waiting to see your eyes light up when I said this, but, you know, when I announced this. But yeah, I've taken it for about a week and a half now, and I'm still here.